I'm very happy to be able to introduce Randy Reid. Randy Reid is with Lumefficient. Randy is also with the Edison Report. And the Edison Report, correct me if I'm wrong, is an online industry news source of amazing, accurate, timely information. Job postings?
Yes.
Wonderful pictures of me and Randy. Pictures of you all too, because he is his photographer here who will take pictures of the crowd, I'm sure. But Randy has been a very good media partner to us, and we really appreciate that, so thank you very much.
Here are AI objectives. I won't read all of them, but hopefully you can kind of see this is what we plan on discussing today, how LiFi can change the industry. That's important to all of us, I think. Talk about how it works. There are two types of LiFi, and I find a lot of people don't know that, so I hope that'll be interesting for you. We sure want to talk about the limitations of LiFi. The last thing I want to do is oversell you and have you think that tomorrow you're going to turn on your computer and you're going to have LiFi. We're not quite there yet. And then we've all heard of 5G. I want to explain a little bit about where I think LiFi will fit with 5G. It's still kind of undetermined. Wherever there is illumination, there is internet. And a little bit of the history. It kind of started in 2011 with Dr. Harold Haas. Has anyone heard of him? He did a TED Talk. He did a TED Talk in 2011. Now that was really the introduction of LiFi, I guess. It had been around, people had been discussing it, working with it, but his TED Talk went viral, okay? And so he gets a lot of credit for kind of starting the LiFi industry, but visual light communication has been around since the 1880s, and there's a letter that Alexander Graham Bell has to his parents where he talks about sending data or communications through light. So been around for a while, but really it's finally coming to where it should be. Here are a few terms, a few definitions we're going to go through. Visible light communication, optical camera communication, optical wireless communication, vehicle-to-vehicle transmissions. Now this is cool. I presented to Nissan North America headquarters, and I learned a lot more than they learned, but just a real good discussion. I've got a few slides on what can happen with vehicle-to-vehicle. Line of sight, very important. Excuse me, and latency. Latency. A lot of issues with latency with Wi-Fi that LiFi can correct. So just imagine a wireless network technology using LEDs, and we're transmitting data. It's really quite simple. We're taking our light, we're modulating it, we're sending zeros and ones to a receiver, okay, and we're encoding that, decoding that, and getting information, usable information. Now benefits, it's important to know the benefits. Last year at Light Fair, we presented LiFi, and it was anywhere between 30 and 50 megabytes per second. 2 months ago, we were in Las Vegas, January, and we presented at CES 100 megabytes per second. So really getting fast. This morning, in preparing for this, I read on the internet a company presented in Barcelona, Spain yesterday at 1 gigabyte per second. So the speed is really getting there. Security. Security is a very important benefit. It's line of sight, and I use the word essentially line of sight, because you have to be under the light to receive the signal. Now, you can be over here. You can still be over here. You can even turn it at a slight angle, but you can't turn it in the corner. You've got to have some light. So it's essentially line of sight. And I'll give an example of why that's important for security. I'm retired Army Reserve, and I was mobilized for Operation Iraqi Freedom. There were rooms and buildings and tents. You can't bring your cell phone. Right? I said, no, I'll turn off my cell phone. No, you won't even bring it in the room, because the military is so sensitive about hacking. So the military really doesn't use much Wi-Fi, right? Everything is hardwired. So you can imagine how difficult that is collaborating, right? You don't have the wireless. So now they can have it, and they really like it. Another example is SDA. Stan Deutsch is my rep here in New York City. So I could go to their office tonight. I could pull up right next to their building, and if I were a hacker, I might be able to hack in their system from my car. I've never left my car. because Wi-Fi travels through walls, it travels through buildings. With LiFi, I would have to break into their building and sit underneath a light. So essentially more secure. Okay? No EMI. Is EMI bad? Is EMI good? I don't know. But hospitals, they don't like a lot of EMI. Airplanes don't like a lot of EMI. In France, there's a law, if you're third grade and younger, no Wi-Fi in the school. They don't want to expose the young brains to Wi-Fi. Okay? That's in France. All right. So again, here's how it works. Imagine music, movies, text, all coming from the internet through a modem, through zeros and ones, reaching your receiver. The human eye can't detect this. We're modulating. We're switching the light on and off thousands of times per second. Some people claim tens of thousands of times per second. So it's very fast. We have a key or a decoder, and we're transferring that data into usable data. So here's a spectrum, and I think you're all familiar, pretty familiar with the spectrum. So the radio bandwidth we're all familiar with. This is where Z-Wave, Zigbee, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. This is the radio bandwidth. This is where we're getting all of our information right now. But look at the wide bandwidth for optical. You have visible light and you have the infrared. It's approximately 2,600 times the bandwidth. So we're not going to be running out of bandwidth, which is what's happening right now with Wi-Fi. And I want to stress, guys, we're going to talk about the visible light and the infrared. So the future of the connected world, imagine 50 billion devices by 2020 all connected. In 2016, 41% of all data in the world went through Wi-Fi. And 2021, it should be 73%. So it just continues to increase, and Wi-Fi is getting filled up. There are issues with Wi-Fi. We all know them. It's a very narrow part of the spectrum, and it's limited capacity. We're dividing the capacity between each other. There are certain times of the day in my home and in my office where I have really fast Wi-Fi, and there are certain times when I have really slow Wi-Fi. Same thing is here at the show. So it depends on how many people are on it and what they're doing. There's also something called latency. We're going to get into this with the vehicle to vehicle. But basically, latency is the amount of time it takes to receive the signal. And we want it to be about what the human eye can perceive, which is 1 millisecond in real-time applications. So think about a car, and the two cars are talking to each other. And I'm dependent upon the car in front of me to notify that they're going to brake. We could use 4G right now, and it could send me that signal, and I would have that signal, but I've crashed into it before I get the signal. That's the problem with latency. So with LiFi, we're going to kind of fix that latency. Okay? So security and privacy. As I mentioned with the military, it's a great application. Emergent applications with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth for real-time location services. Intelligence and safety, again, very important, and then the latency. These are all problems that we have with Wi-Fi, and as I mentioned, the Wi-Fi signal, it bleeds through the building, so anybody can pick it up anywhere. Banks, they can't use Wi-Fi. DoD can't use Wi-Fi. A lot of high-tech secure companies, they can't use Wi-Fi. So with LiFi, where we're getting the data from the light, we take care of the security and the privacy. Now, people can still hack in, right? If you click on a link of a bad link and you're doing it through LiFi, it doesn't matter. You're still going to get the virus. You're still going to get hacked. Better resolution for the indoor positioning, interference and safety, doesn't interfere with critical systems such as in hospitals, in airplanes, those types of applications, and a greater capacity. But let's talk about two types of LiFi. Now, everyone's heard of LiFi, for the most part, right? Or you wouldn't be here. But did you know there were two types? There's bidirectional, and this is what we're going to use with our PC, our laptops, and our pads. We're going to send and receive data through light. And then there's mono-directional, or one-way LiFi. So with one-way LiFi, with two-way LiFi, I could go to Netflix. And I tell Netflix I want House of Cards. I type in House of Cards, and boom, I get House of Cards. It downloads it. With the one-way, I'm going to use my phone. I can't tell Netflix what I want. I could get House of Cards. They're going to give me whatever they want to give me. So that's not really practical, right? So we've got to find applications that work for both types. And let's focus on the bidirectional for just a minute. So PoE, we've all heard of PoE. PoE is coming. Frankly, there are very few sales in PoE. It's coming now because most of the LiFi lights are PoE. You plug in a Cat 6 cable and you're done. So what's that mean? That means less labor. And typically your IT labor is about 20 to 30% cheaper than your electrical labor. Also less materials because you don't have conduit. Now, some say, well, you have more routers, and you do have more routers. But PoE can be a cost savings, and oh, by the way, we're going to give you the internet as an added benefit. We think this can really help with PoE. And basically, we're inserting a module in the fixture between the driver and the LEDs. That makes sense, right? It can't be in front of the driver. It's got to be after the driver. So we're taking the power from the driver and we're modulating it. Okay, we're speeding it up. We're turning the light on and off thousands of times or tens of thousands of times per second, and that's how we're transmitting data. There's a problem, and that's the dongle. Now, who used a dongle to get Wi-Fi 20 years ago? Right? That's kind of how we did it because it wasn't built into our machines. Our kids can't quite believe that. People today don't want to use a dongle, right? Really, who wants to plug a dongle in a laptop and try to move around with a dongle? Nobody wants to do it. And for an iPad, right, iPad doesn't have a USB. So now we've got to have a cable going to the C port, right? It just makes it all complex. So, but this is where the one-way can come in. Now here's some news from Apple. This is some really good news, guys. I believe that LiFi won't take off until this is built into the computers. Once it's built in, this is my bet that LiFi is really going to take off. So this is why I'm in it now. We're looking for early adopters because in 2 or 3 years, I believe this little sensor will be built into the computer and that's when it's going to take off. I also believe that Apple will be first. I don't know that for a fact. Apple's very secretive. The good news is that they have already built the drivers into iOS, right? Apple. That's a really good sign. But can you read the fine print right here? Can anybody read that little fine print? You can't. So I blew it up. I blew it up for you. Here's the bad news. It's 3 years ago. 3 years ago, they believed in LiFi so much, they put it on all their drivers. They put the drivers in. What have they done since? Nothing to our knowledge. To our knowledge, right? Apple's a very secretive company, but to our, so this is bad. In my opinion, this is really bad. That they got excited and then they stopped. So the word that we hear in kind of the LiFi industry is all the device makers. Lenovo, Dell, HP, Apple, they're all waiting to finish their 5G. They're doing a ton of R&D on 5G, and we're told, kind of through the grapevine, when 5G is finished, that's when we can expect them to start working on LiFi. But until that happens, I don't think it's going to take off. And I do want to show you, this is our 2018 dongle. Here's our 2019 dongle. Okay? We're making progress. We're making progress. And in a few years, hopefully it will be built in. So that's the bad news. And by the way, no other company is doing it. We don't have drivers. So for this PC, we would have to load our drivers into it because they just don't have it. Okay, some neat beta sites going on now around the world. And I have to be generic, but one company claims now 30 pilot projects. And I spoke to them about it kind of in depth. They're small projects, but they're in 6 countries all over the world. And so a lot of them are students, so they're getting a lot of feedback and they're learning a lot. So that's really good for the industry. The U.S. Army is doing beta sites, U.S. Navy as well. And then Airbus, and this is kind of interesting, they have planned 3 planes for 2019 that they're going to add LiFi. And the way I understand it is they're going to do different things in different planes. So one model, you get a free dongle. So you have to give a license or some sort of ID. You get on the plane. Imagine how cumbersome this is, right? You get a dongle, and then when you get off, you have to turn in the dongle, okay? And they're maybe going to do it for free. Then the second plane, maybe they charge 10 or 20 euro for it. And then the third plane, maybe 30 or 40 euro. But guys, never going to have speed. See, we all travel on planes, and I wait for that 10,000 feet, and boom, I'm powering up, and I've got pretty good speed. And then within 4 or 5 minutes, 10 people are on, and my speed drops. And halfway through the flight, 50 people are on, and I even get kicked off, right? I mean, it's horrible. So on planes, now they can do it using the light above you. So the plane can get the signal. It's distributing it through Wi-Fi that is a real problem. So planes can be a really neat one. And then there was an automobile at CES this year that had LiFi, some of the vehicle to vehicle. And again, we'll show you that. So here is the Navy. So the Navy can't really use Wi-Fi. It doesn't work so well underwater. LiFi does. LiFi does. So that's an opportunity. And then here's one of my favorites, and this is the Army. And what I like is everybody in the light industry knows if you're a luminaire manufacturer and you sell 4 fixtures to the University of Tennessee for a beta site, you do a press release, hey, we lit the University of Tennessee, right? Our stuff is in there. Well, it's only 4 fixtures. That's kind of what the industry does, right? You get a little job, you write a great press release, it looks like you've got the whole world. Well, in this case, the fixture manufacturer that sold this, they didn't write the press release, the Army did. And that's a big deal, because the Army typically does not write press releases. So you can go army.mil and you can actually read it from a colonel who wrote a press release about LiFi and what they're doing. And I just know from my time in the field, guys, we were laying Cat5 cable so through the fields, sometimes for miles, so we could communicate. So I think great applications for the military, and not just the U.S. military. You're seeing militaries around the world using LiFi right now. And here's something else they like. This blew me away. My small dongle, I don't know what I did. Oh, here it is. They like the dongle. It's another control point. So at the beginning of the day, they hand out the dongle. At the end of the day, they collect the dongles. Nobody goes home if there's a missing dongle until they find it. We used to do the same thing with M16s, right? You couldn't leave until every weapon was accounted, and you just didn't leave until it turned up. They're doing the same thing here. So in a way, the dongle can be an added security point. So where security is really important, LiFi is a great solution. Now let's speak about mono-directional. This is the one way. So our phones have cameras in them, and we can use our camera to receive the data. But I want to stress, we're not actually capturing images. Right now I'm capturing images, and this is going to kill my battery. So we're not capturing images at all. We are just using the camera to capture data. And by capturing data, that does not kill our battery. But I want to stress, we can only receive it. We cannot send it. So it's a mobile phone capturing data. And then there are 2 types of mono-directional. One is stored on the phone, and one is stored in the cloud. So we will take our phone and imagine we walk into a museum and we scan the QR code. And by scanning the QR code, we're opting in. And we are accepting that we're going to allow the lights to track us. So now we come and we are in front of Starry Night. Does that work? Yeah. And now we have Rembrandt. So now we'll come back, hopefully Starry Night. And Mona Lisa? Mona Lisa. Yeah. Mona Lisa, okay? Data from these lights. So I didn't tell the lights I want to see the Mona Lisa. I'm standing in front of the Mona Lisa and I'm getting the data. Now it can be a picture, it could be a text file, it could be a PowerPoint presentation, it could be an audio file, it could be a video file.
The Mona Lisa is an oil painting on wood measuring 77 by 53 centimeters.
Or PowerPoint. So this is Starry Night. Tells a little bit about Van Gogh. He had a really tough life. And so it gives you that information.
Rembrandt, van Rijn.
Okay? So I'm bored with Rembrandt, I want to come back to the Mona Lisa.
You got bounced out.
The
Right?
Mona Lisa is an oil painting on
Come back to Rembrandt. Okay? So, let's discuss how this, you understand what happened, right? Where'd the data come from? Let me, I don't want to open the question, but does anybody know where the data came from? Okay. Here's what happened. If we loaded those videos from here, guys, it would take a long time. We're only 1 megabyte a second here with our built-in camera on our phone, right? So that's a weakness, right? We don't have any kind of high speed whatsoever. So to make our phones work, we did something kind of clever. Remember I said we took that QR code when we walked to the museum? We also downloaded files. So I downloaded 3 files. Call this number 16, number 17, and number 18. So now, when I get in front of number 16, my phone pulls up the file, Mona Lisa. That's number 16. So the only data being transmitted is the address, number 16. So now I come over here, and now number 17 is coming up. Now number 18, and it just pulls the file. So it's kind of a clever way to use the benefit of Wi-Fi. We truly are transmitting data. It's the address, though. It's not the file. It's too big. That's the way we do it. Well, another way is store on a cloud. So now we go to the museum. Think about we're going to the Louvre, right? 500 paintings. We can't store 500 video files on our phone. It'll blow up. So we scan the QR code, okay? And again, allows us to opt in. It allows us to be tracked. And it also loads those addresses and the location of the file. So now I go in front of number 16, and it pulls it from the web, from the cloud, using Wi-Fi or cellular. You with me? Now I go to 17, and this file's coming from the web. So I could have 500 files on the cloud. I'm not limited. And then number 18, and it pulls that file from the cloud. Okay? So I just want to make sure you understand the difference between two-way and one-way, and the benefits and the drawbacks to each of them. And 2 types of one-way: store on the cloud and store on the phone. All right. Everybody understand what we're talking about pretty much? Forget everything I just told you. Forget everything I just told you. Remember the dongle that we use for laptops? Well, now one company figured a way to build the dongle into the phone case. It's not into the phone, it's into the phone case. It's pretty clever. So now we can have high speed on our phones. Now we can have two-way LiFi on our phones. We can have two-way LiFi on our iPads. Because I'm sure if they can do it here, they can do it for the iPad. So this technology is just changing very, very fast. Okay? Now, this is a press release and a picture. I've not seen it. I don't know how real it is, but this came out about 2 or 3 weeks ago. 5G. Okay, I read a lot about 5G, perhaps you do too. The one thing about 5G is everything is not settled. Everyone thinks, well, we went 3G, 4G, now we're going 5G, it's just going to come. There's a lot of debate. So in my city of Nashville, for example, let's say that we have 200 cell phone towers in the city of Nashville. With 5G, if we have 200, we may have 1,000. We're going to have a lot more towers. So 5G is very, very fast, but you've got to have a lot more points. Now that's the real drawback to it. And many times, like in New York City, you're using your GPS to walk around. You can't get around because those antennas are on top of the buildings, you know, the 80-story buildings. With 5G, it's going to be down on the street. It's going to be embedded with the poles and or embedded with the fixtures. Okay? So 5G is coming. It's going to be very, very fast. Now, in my family, I have grown kids. For some reason, I'm still paying their cell phone bills. I don't know why. So we have 5 phones on our plan with Verizon, and I think we pay about $400 a month. Okay? So that's for 5 phones and, you know, international and that kind of stuff. So Well, everyone says with 5G you don't need LiFi because you just connect everything to 5G. But I don't think that's right. First of all, 5G is very expensive. All those towers, they cost a fortune. And they've got to buy the rights from the city, so it's going to be very expensive. So you can look for some nice price increases on your plans. And then I don't know that every device in my home is going to be connected to 5G because of the cost. But I'll likely have a 5G router. So here is my home. So that's my home. It's built in the 80s, before Al Gore invented the internet, right? There was no internet. And I have a lot of, almost every light bulb except for my filament bulbs are connected, okay? So almost just about every light bulb. We cut the cable, so we're streaming. We have 4 TVs, we only use 2 of them pretty much at the same time. We have 2 laptops, a PC, the Nest. We have Hey Google and Alexa. I have a scale that's connected that's kind of sick, right? That's really kind of sick. 3 phones now, because there are 2 of us there, and then 2 watches, right? All that's connected to Wi-Fi, and guess what? My neighbors are doing the same thing.
On your system?
No. Well, that's good. You're good. That's really good. Could be. Could be. My neighbor did once ask me for the password. He said his was out. Not going there. So, now, think about it. Am I going to connect each TV to 5G? Probably not. It's probably going to be very expensive to do that. I'll probably have a 5G router in my home where I will receive that nice 5G signal really, really fast. But then I'm going to use Wi-Fi to distribute it through my house and slow it down? Maybe not. Maybe this is where LiFi comes in. My point is, I do not believe that LiFi, at least in my lifetime, will ever replace Wi-Fi. I think it's going to complement Wi-Fi. Right now on my iPad, I have cellular and I have Wi-Fi. I always use Wi-Fi because it's faster. Well, sometimes I'm in a hotel and they're going to charge me $15.95, so I won't use Wi-Fi, I'll use my cellular. And it's a little bit slower, but I'll do it. Well, now we're going to have a third option. You're going to have LiFi. You'll always use LiFi, but it's not going to be available everywhere, right? So then you'll fall back to Wi-Fi. And then somebody's going to try to charge you for Wi-Fi, then you fall back to cellular. So look at LiFi as a third option, okay? I don't think it's going to replace Wi-Fi, at least in my lifetime. So, standardization. Guys, we're not doing so well. We have a couple different standards. 802.11, pretty much everybody knows is the Wi-Fi. There's 802.11.bb, okay? And that's one standard for LiFi. There's 802.15.7, and that's another standard. And companies are following different standards. And I wrote a piece in the Edison Report about 6 weeks ago stating that my opinion is I don't think the device manufacturers are really going to get serious about LiFi until our industry gets serious about a standard. Because do you think they're going to have both standards? They're going to have 2 receptacles in the computer? No. So as an industry, we've got to get together as a standard. And IEEE is the way to do it. And this is a AIA conference, so I can't speak about company names, but we can just all hope that the companies will get together and agree on one standard, because it's slowing things down, I believe, right now. And then IP, I do want to show you this because IP is very important. You can see the various countries with the IP for LiFi. And the interesting thing, and to my knowledge, almost none of it has been challenged. So the fact that none of it's been challenged, nobody really knows, right? I mean, I can go and get a patent. Anybody can get a patent. The trick is to defend the patent. That's right. That's the really, is once it's defended, then you know what you've got and what you don't have. And I don't know of any real litigation that's gone on in the IP thing for LiFi. Now in LEDs, we constantly cover it, and my goodness, there's a whole lot going on with it in LED. But here, we don't see it yet. And we'd like to see some of it so it can kind of shake out a little bit. Is Dan Blitzer here? No. Dan told me last night, he said, kind of think about LiFi as LED, maybe in the year 2000 or 2001. Guys, we're in our early infancy, okay? And you know, to me, 2007 is when I began paying attention to LiFi. I was very late to the party, but But 2000, 2001 is kind of where we are with LiFi. We are just scratching the surface. Now let's talk about V2V. V2V is so cool. So again, I went to a Nissan World headquarters. They're based in Nashville. I had some friends there. Yeah, you can come in and talk to us. Turns out they're doing everything in Japan. They're way, ahead of me in what they're planning on. But right now in cars we have LiDAR, radar, and cameras. And many of you have that in your vehicles. So I test drove a Tesla. Okay? I'm not going to buy a Tesla. Can't afford a Tesla. But I did test drive it. So we're on the interstate. We put on the cruise control, and it's adaptive cruise control. So the car in front of me begins to slow down. My car begins to slow down. It's really pretty cool. Freaked me out a little bit. But still, it's pretty cool. So we are reacting to the car in front of us. He said, now, I want you to turn on your blinker and change lanes. And I said, okay, I'll wait till that car gets out of my way. He said, no need to. Just turn on the blinker. So I turned on the blinker, and apparently the car on my left was going a little slower, so our car actually speeded up. So we speeded up. I've got my hands on the wheel, and all of a sudden, at the appropriate time, it changed lanes. Now again, it's hurt your intuition, right? You just want to grab that wheel and do something. And so that was cool. And then we're going down the interstate. Now there's a curve coming up, and it's a pretty serious curve. He said, keep your hands on the wheel. I said, don't do anything. And sure enough, it just started turning on its own, and it kept me right between the white lines. So it's using LiDAR, radar, and cameras. Now remember that car that started to brake in front of me? We reacted to it. What if we could predict it? Instead of waiting for it to brake, what if we know it's getting ready to brake in 3 seconds? It's getting ready to brake in 20 seconds. It's going to brake in half a mile, and we know that in advance. It changes the whole game. Almost everybody uses Uber or Lyft to some extent. Almost everybody uses Waze and Google Maps and Apple Maps. You kind of marry them together, and now with Uber, like when I came to the airport, okay, I pushed a button, a car showed up, and I allowed it to make a stop on the way because I had plenty of time, so it picked someone else up, and it kind of cut about 30% off the ride. So that phone knew we were going to the airport. It knew exactly where we were going. So in a period of time, I don't know when that is, I think all cars will be equipped with communications and will be communicating. So the car in front of me, my car knows his route because it's all programmed. We could do it today through 4G, but by the time I get the signal, I've crashed, right? So what about 5G? Well, 5G is very fast. So with 5G, we could have these vehicles all communicating, but 5G is going to be kind of in the downtown area. It's not going to be in the rural areas, right? At least for a long, long time. So it's not really practical. But that's where LiFi can come in. So at the CES show, there was a car, Magna Morelli, Italian, and they were demonstrating LiFi in the headlights and in the taillights. Now let's speak for a minute about platooning. This might be a little scary for you. The trucks, right now, maybe they're 200 feet apart, or they're supposed to be on the interstate. Well, with LiFi and being able to predict, they could be 20 feet. It's called platooning, almost like a train. And they've been doing experiments in Europe and in the US. You can increase your gas mileage by about 30% because you don't have to worry about the car or the truck in front of you stopping for no apparent reason. Now, if there's a nail in the road, the truck gets a flat tire, I don't know what happens, right? Haven't quite sorted that out. It's coming. Right. Okay, guys, that's it. We're going to open it up to questions. Just real quick, LiFi is winning awards. CES gave 2 awards in 2018. Light Fair gave an award in 2018. And then the IES Progress Report gave 2 awards for LiFi products. And that concludes. We're going to open for questions. And if you want more information, I'm going to be speaking at NAILD in April, at Light Fair in May, and in the LiFi Congress in June. And now we're happy to answer any questions.